Redditors who have mistakenly walked in on people doing the deed. What's your story? I was a pizza delivery boy fresh out of high school, and the place I worked for had a 25-minute delivery guarantee happening at the time. Between placing the order and me arriving to their house, I'd arrived within 10 minutes as the address was close by, they decided that it'd be a good time to get down to business. I arrived, walked up to their open front door, and knocked. In full view of the front door, they were going at it like rabbits. The woman, hearing me knock, hastily covered herself, exclaiming, "Oh my God, oh my God," while the man just casually walked to the door completely naked and erect with his cash. He even stood there while I counted out his change. It was probably the most awkward thing I've ever encountered. Not walking in, but I could hear Mom screaming. So when I was about 5 or 6, I was at home with my parents. Usual stuff, they leave me in the living room watching some cartoons while they go around doing house chores. One time, I went upstairs to look for something, and I just heard my mom in the room screaming like she was getting hurt. The door was locked. Immediately, I thought, I don't know why, but I thought my dad was hurting my mom. So there I was, knocking on the door, screaming at my dad to stop hurting Mom, and I remember my mom saying something along the lines of, "It's okay, baby. I'm okay. Mommy's okay," between moans and screams. Now I'm 24, and I know why. I was young and naive, and my older brother was quietly doing the deed with his girlfriend at our parents' house. I went to call them for dinner and opened the door. Neither of our rooms had locks, and thankfully they were just under the covers, and I immediately left. But my brother followed and slapped me round the head. I was probably 13 and home on a Saturday night. My parents had been drinking and listening to loud music in the living room, so I was in my bedroom. Around 10 p.m., I no longer heard music or talking, so I decided to go watch TV in the living room. Walked in on my parents doing it with all the lights on. They didn't see me, and I immediately turned around and went back the way I came, mortified. Unfortunately, we lived in an older house, so they heard the floors creaking as I rushed back to my bedroom. A few minutes later, I heard my parents drunkenly stumble down the hall as I turned off my bedroom light and jumped into bed, pretending to be asleep. I heard them knock on my brother's bedroom door next to mine, and he was 10. Since he was still awake and playing video games in his bedroom, my parents assumed he had been the one who walked in on them. My dad, who was still pretty drunk at the time, launched in on an hour-long awkward talk about the birds and the bees, while my brother sat there completely confused as to what the F was going on. I work security on my campus. There were a few times walking in on couples making out or something, but one time I walked into the art building to close it up. I normally didn't check the basement because there wasn't ever really anyone down there. It's the play costume area. This night there was a play earlier, so I decided to check it. I walked through and there was this one door closed and it had a small glass window. I saw one girl with her legs spread and another girl with her face in between them eating her out pretty miraculously. I knocked on the door and kind of ran and cleared the rest of the building and then went and checked to make sure they had left. I go to a small school, so I knew who the girls were. The eater is married now to a guy. I never really told anyone about it. I had a hotel room booked on a trip to Queensland, Australia, and they gave me the key to a room that was apparently already inhabited. Walked in on a lovely couple enjoying some doggy-style action. I immediately closed the door. They hadn't heard me, thankfully, and went back to explain the mistake to the front desk. They were mortified and moved me to a penthouse room with amazing views of the waterfront, along with some free chocolates and dinner. I did pest control while in college, and for the apartments I sprayed, I had a master key. The deal was that after knocking for a minute, if no one came to the door, then I went in and announced my presence just in case. Then I would spray, leave a card, and lock back up. So I knock, no answer, so I opened the door. From the doorway I could see clear through into the bedroom, and I could see the edge of the bed sticking out. What I saw were two giant trunks of legs hanging off the edge of the bed, bouncing, with a mostly naked woman riding on top. The woman screamed, and I immediately slammed the door and took off to the next apartment, and never saw them again, thankfully. Freshman year of college. Everyone on our floor was friendly, and we had an open door policy, so we would often walk into each other's rooms to do things like ask if people wanted to go to the dining hall together or get a group together to play soccer. So one day, one of my friends was under the weather with a cold. I thought on my way out the door to the dining hall, I'd stop in his room and ask if he wanted me to bring him some chicken soup. Little did I know his girlfriend had driven 4 hours to come surprise visit him because he was sick. I barge into his room, as I always did, and the first thing I see is this girl on top of him, topless. So I did the only sensible thing. I asked if she wanted chicken soup too. 4 years later, and we're all still friends, not as close as we were freshman year, but hey, that's what happens over time. Walked in on my female flatmate having a two-guy three-way, and not like the three-way you see in porn where one's at the mouth and the other is behind. It was like a sandwich. There was a dude on his back, my flatmate laying on top of him, and then the last guy was kind of lurched over the whole affair with his feet on the ground, but his torso on her back. We never discussed it, but it was one of the weirdest things I'd ever seen happen, and actually put me off starting a relationship with her until the opportunity came up. So it's Halloween, and I'm 18 or 19, partying with my friends. A few friends were visiting from a different city and had a hotel room that we all ended up going back to. It was 4 girls and one of the girls' boyfriends. I had already thrown up outside of the hotel in the bushes, but I knew I'd have to do it again. We all get settled, and some of the other girls are playing a card game whilst I had the spins. So I remember jumping up and running to the bathroom. I opened the door, and my friend's roommate was having fun with her boyfriend in the shower. I shut the door fast and say sorry, but I still had to vomit, so I was like, guys, get out. They told me, hey, come back in, and me being drunk thought, okay, they're going to leave. And no, they just closed the shower curtain, so I listened to them doing the deed while they got it on to the sounds of my puke. I threw a house party and put a sign on my bedroom saying off limits. A friend told me that he heard someone in my room, so I entered and saw the prom queen riding a buddy of mine. I quickly exited the room. Later that night, he came up to me and said, hey, I'm sorry about doing the deed in your bed, but at least you got to see Alexa naked, we cool? And we shook hands and never spoke of it again. My little sister's 16th birthday. I was definitely too old to enjoy myself. We had an olive grove down the back of our house. Later on in the night, I walked down there into a crowd that had formed. The group was standing around watching 2 kids doing it for the first time. It still haunts my dreams. Walked in on my buddy's girlfriend walking back to her room from the bathroom naked while he was putting pants on. He told me to come in because he thought she was getting dressed in the restroom, but she had left some clothes, I guess. I just remember my thought process being, that's a butt. Boy, is it red. Oh my God, that's Linda's butt. After they shut the door and got dressed, she came out and teased me, saying my face was more red than her butt. I've never been more embarrassed in my life. I walked in on my roommate and his girlfriend in college. I think one of my classes was canceled because it was the week before finals. As I opened the door, they both yelled, Dan, no! And I just saw my roommate's butt trying to shield himself and his girlfriend. I let out an insanely over-the-top laugh and then left. About 5 minutes later, he walked into our friend's dorm that I went to hang out in, and he said, we only had to make it 1 more week without this happening. Good times.